Hello everyone and welcome to the round 17 trade targets and burning questions live stream, coming at you guys a little bit later than I planned, although that has come with some good updated information. Well, good is maybe not really the right word to say, but it's good that we've got the information and we can talk about it in tonight's live stream. So quick shout out to Mitchell saying he needs more poems in his life. So he's actually put in the poem emoji. Given that he's a member, a big shout out to you. So I've just thought of a very quick poem for you, Mitchell, specifically, and that maybe sums up all of our situations. So round 17, the big bye week. Little do we know, the Sharks lineup has a tweak. Things are not going to be fine because we don't have Nico Hynes. He is out. He's got COVID, or at least his rat tests have confirmed him to be positive, and he is out. So quick look here at the Sharks lineup. This is from the 24-hour cut. Will Kennedy, Katoa, Ramian, Tracy, Mulatalo, Moylan, yep, sweet, all good to go. Braden Trindle at halfback. Now that's a weird one. I could have sworn that Nico Hynes was there. He's out. Braden Trindle is in. And there's a few flow-on changes from that as well. So Trindle has come in from 18th man. So now you've got and of course Toby Rudolph is the other collateral damage from that too. So he's also out. So that actually means if anyone who's held onto Andrew Fafita, he is starting prop, so that is really, really good for you. And also, now, I believe Cam McInnes should also probably be starting, although it hasn't been reflected here. Just going to have a quick check of the... No, McInnes isn't starting. I don't know where I read that. Maybe it happens on game day. But yeah, look, Hynes is out. There'll be some interesting trades that people might think about doing. Maybe selling Hynes to Pappenhausen and then maybe getting back Hynes via like maybe an Ezra Mann. That's something I've thought about. I don't need to necessarily do that to get Pappenhausen. I can hold Nico Hynes, but for people who are kind of thinking about that, being a bit more aggressive, you could try that. And it kind of puts to bed any VC decisions as well between Pappenhausen and Nico Hynes. I was already probably going to lean Pappenhausen anyway, but this just kind of locks up the decision. Sharks obviously won't be as strong without Nico, so you'd think that maybe that makes even Pappenhausen a stronger potential buy as well this week. He already is the most bought player from memory. Quick hello to everyone in the chat already. So Mitchell, of course, got your poem. I hope you enjoy that one. Sticky Nicky, good to see you. Davey K, yep. You're right. Hynes is tested. I don't actually know if he's been tested positive for COVID. He's had 2 positive rat tests. So that's what I've read. But either way, he's out. And then hello to Ian Johnson as well. Some questions on 2RS, which we'll definitely get to, on Madison, Lane, Joe O. We'll definitely get on that. Hello to you, Peter, Paycheck, Jason, Sticky Nicky, I already said hello to you, Sandy, Jacob. Good to see all of you guys and girls in the live stream. So we'll get onto the content. So before we get into the normal hot topics and stuff, apart from poems about Nico Hynes, so a quick update on how I'm going in terms of rank wise and things. So had a pretty decent week last week, finished on 1186. Unfortunately, last minute decided to play Karaz over Payne Haas. So if I'd done that, I would have got an extra 20-ish points. So I would have gone over 1200. But look, I'm happy enough with the last few weeks have been good. Few steady green arrows. So I'm just about 4.5k now at the moment, which is good from like being like 11k a while ago. So yeah, this week I've got 12 trades. As you can see, I've still got 1 boost left as well. So could be some big moves potentially for this week as well. Try to push maybe really hard for round 17. Obviously, majority of us have lost now a number, but look, we're all kind of in the same boat. So it's not a massive issue. But it generally does probably mean that the Sharks players won't be as good as we thought. You know, like your Mulatalos, Katoas, for example, probably not as likely to get bigger scores this week as maybe they would have if Hynes was playing. And a couple of shout outs as well, just before we start getting into questions and the topics. So I want to give a quick shout out to the group league. So Rob from Let's Go Brandon, he's sitting in 3rd overall. He not only topped last week's round score, but he's the top of our mini league as well. So he's absolutely killing it in 3rd place. So yeah, Rob, big props to you. Hopefully you can keep it up and push for number 1. And shout out to Alex, James, Shane, Toby, Becky, Chris, Samuel, James, and Vaughn, all sitting really, really high up. Specific shout out, I know, for Toby because he did buy Pappenhausen last week, and I think was going a bit crazy on Twitter when he was scoring 100 points in 5 minutes, which is understandable. I would have had the exact same reactions as well. final shout out will be to members. So Mitchell is one in the chat. So this is just a way that you guys can obviously show some support for the channel. So thank you to Roosters117, Toby, That Fat Guy, Mitchell, James, Gazaraki, Metalhead Smurf, which I love that username, Tyler Botting, and Moz for all being members. There is a few emojis that they, members can use in the chat. So Mitchell asked for a poem. He got a poem. What a man. If Ryan Pappenhausen scores 200 as our vice captain, we can all start spamming what a man. And you can tell me if you got a green or red arrow in the roundup streams. But yeah, quick little shout out as well there to members. So quickly we'll get onto the hot topics now. So Paycheck, I can see you've already done that suggestion of selling Hynes to Pappy. Yeah, so there was a couple of questions obviously about Pappenhausen after his ridiculous antics last week. A few people are asking, is he a must-have this week? My answer is quite straightforward. It's a yes. He's one of the few guys who, I think he generally has been the best Supercoach player so far this season. Obviously, he's been injured for a while, but when he's played, the man is gone massive. He's got an average of 100. Tim Williams, shout out to him as well, has said it a couple of times on his podcast. He scored 5 tons in 10 games, which is ridiculous. He's goal kicking for one of the best teams in the comp. He's just got that upside, which is crazy, and you saw it all last week in 10 minutes, right? So yes, I think getting Pappenhausen for me this week above anyone else, like Latrell, for example, I think you just got to try to find a way to get Pappenhausen. So I think that's the obvious part of it in my eyes. I think you have to try to get him. I pulled this question up, I think it was from Trident on Twitter. He said, what guns are you willing to sell to bring in Pappy? I thought this was more of the interesting discussion point because I think a lot of people like myself are actually deliberating the sells. So I can see Jonah, for example, you're saying, would you sell Tungo or Angus? You're asking for Madison, but I know a few people like myself are in a similar position to, kind of sell down to one of these round 17 nuffs to try to make the money to get the likes of Pappenhausen in as well. So I tried to do a quick kind of categorization. Honestly, I'm just going to do this live on air as well. Just quickly change it to add one more player to the list there. So the easiest sells in my eyes. So there was a few guys who I think are very straightforward in my opinion to be selling. Now, Kula and Karaz obviously both made money last week. Kula went big last week as well. But I feel like these are guys who I don't consider in your kind of run home 17. They kind of sit outside of that. So I think these guys have made money, and I think a couple of downgrades via duels to some nuffs even directly via duels to the fullback spot should hopefully get you in a position to be getting to Pappenhausen. So I'm pretty comfortable selling those. Even Swali, despite him being so good in the last couple of weeks, I think I put him into the same bracket. So kind of those cheap round 13 center wings we all gone for who've made a little bit of coin. I kind of see those as pretty easy sells in my opinion. And then Campbell Graham obviously has come out. I think it's like a fractured eye socket, facial fracture, whatever it is. Could be potentially out for 6 to 8 weeks is what I've heard. Even if it's less than that, the Rabbitohs do have a tough run home as well. So I think selling someone like Graham is pretty easy as well in my eyes and pretty straightforward. Now I think what's a bit more interesting is looking at some of the more not as easy sells. So I'm having similar debates as well. So the likes of selling like Talakai is not going to be available for round 17. Isaac Tungo, Ewan Aitken, Ezra Mam, because Ezra Mam obviously has the duel where you can swap via Hynes to get Pappenhausen. Angus Crichton, Max King is another one. So there's a few guys here who, very feasibly can be held, but we're all trying to sell down to these kind of nuffs, right? And we're trying to find out who are the ones we want to be selling. So I know a few of you are asking questions about sells, but not necessarily for Paps, but for second row forwards. Hopefully my views on this will help you out as well in terms of which of these guys maybe is better to sell. So I'm kind of struggling to sell. The ones who I'm most uncomfortable selling, I'd say, of this list is probably Thungor is one, just when he plays for Penrith. And it's come out, I think, this week that from Wacko's Whispers that a lot of the Panthers might get rested in round 18 who play in Origin. So Thungor is not one of those guys. So he's one of those guys who I think, when he's an outside back, there's less chance of him getting a rest. And so I think he's going to be one of these really comfortable season hold kind of guys who can play on matchups. And from memory, the Panthers play the Tigers in round 18. That's the kind of game that you want to be playing the likes of, Thungor, Taylor May as well. I've seen someone or a few people looking at maybe selling him. I really don't like the idea of selling Taylor May, even more so than Thungor, because I think he is one of those top 5 center wings. Thungor is a bit of a different one, but with the duel, he had a good week last week as well. And yeah, they do play the Tigers in round 18. It's just one of those guys who I'm really struggling to sell. So I think all those other guys on this list in the middle column on the not as easy I kind of prefer to sell them above someone like Dungor, just when you're playing for the backline for the best team in the comp. Kind of, for me, feels like that's the reason why I'd want to be holding him. And very easy to play in matchups, very handy duel as well. So the ones who I'm saying are probably okay to sell. So I think Ezra Mann, yes, he'll probably make some cash, and it's a decent matchup this week against the Dragons, but if he is your only way to get to Pappenhausen, I would be selling him this week, because I think a lot of people are going to be selling him in round 18 anyway, for the likes of maybe a Tedesco in round 18 via duels. That's going to be a lot of people's plan. Maybe they sell him back to Munster, people who sold Munster. So yeah, for me, Mam is one of the ones who I'm fine to sell. It's not great, obviously, because he plays this week and we want to try to maximize our numbers. But if you're one of those guys who, for example, has Ezra Mam and you don't really have other ways to get to Pappenhausen apart from selling him, I think it's fine. I think Pappenhausen is just that kind of guy. Like, to illustrate more of the point as well, it's one of these weeks where now, even more so without Nico Hynes, Pappenhausen is going to be by far the most vice-captained player. And so if he goes big for like 150, you don't own him or you haven't VC'd him, and majority of the game does. It's in one of these weeks where the player pool is a lot less. That's when it can really hurt you. So for me, trying to get him in is paramount. It's only really not trying to sell too many of those top line guns. In terms of the others in the not as easy, so I think between, say, Talakai, Aitken, Crichton and Max King, I'm okay with selling Aitken. I think he had a good week last week, but Warriors don't have a great draw coming up. He was named in the centres, then shifted to the back to the back row, so I wonder if that's going to continue. He's great playing in the back row. Centre wing, I would suspect that his base is not going to be as high. He had really high base last week of 66, so he has been very, very handy. But again, I don't see him as one of these kind of genuine top 17 guys. Very handy to have in the squad for depth. But like, for example, I'm thinking about maybe selling him this week for enough to generate some cash so that next week I can maybe get in the likes of a Harry Grant or James Tedesco. So Angus Crichton is the big one. I think Angus or Talakai. I think someone asked it earlier in the chat. I'm just going to quickly try to find your question. So if I can't find it, apologies. I will have to just make up the scenario. So Jonah, for example, to answer your question from earlier about selling Dungor or Angus for Madison, I would be probably selling Angus over Dungor just because of the duel, and I think he's slightly got the higher upside just playing for the best team. Okay, I can't find that question, but let's say, for example, if you're deliberating between selling Talakai and selling Angus. So I think the Sharks have probably one of the best draws for the run home. Obviously, he could get a rest in round 18. So just want to have a quick look at when the Sharks play in round 18, because I think the number of days between that game and State of Origin, if there was a chance that Talakai gets a rest, that obviously means he misses 2 games, as opposed to, say, just the 1 game for Angus. Although obviously Angus has the same potential risk about backing up. Although, to be fair, actually, now that I've thought about it, they're both bench players. Okay, Sharks actually play the first game on the 15th of July, so it's only 2 days after. So there is a potential risk that Talakai does not back up. I mean, he could, if he only plays maybe 15-20 minutes off the bench, but that is a possibility. Now that I've thought about that a little bit more, I would say maybe you sell Talakai before Angus, but they do have a really nice run home draw, and again, the duel makes me think I kind of view Talakai. I know he's been really frustrating, but I still also think he's kind of a hold. Now, Angus has been a little bit of a weird one because he's not been bad. It's just not the same that we've seen him in the past seasons. Like, if you look at his scores, his scores have actually been really good since about round 8. So I'm just going to rattle off his scores from round 8. So this is a pretty decent sample size. And the score from 80. Sorry, you know what I'll do? I'll tell you what his scores were since he started playing 80 minutes again after being benched the first few weeks. 49 and 43, not great. Then it was 80, 64, 42, 73, 84, 83, 55, 60, 31. So there's a few dud scores in there, like a 42 and a 31, which obviously came with the sin bin. If you take that out, he would have been hitting like a 45, maybe a 50. And that was in 70 minutes. So I'm looking at those scores and seeing what Roosters have got coming up with the Dragons, Knights, Manly, Broncos, Cowboys, Tigers. There's a few good matchups in there. And I think the fact that I'm seeing people sell him at my ranking of 4.5k makes me think I actually want to kind of hold him as a bit of a pod as well. So I'm not really helping here, am I, in terms of who would you sell? I think I'd probably sell Angus just ahead of Talakai, though, just because he doesn't have the duel. But I'd sell Aiken, I think, above Angus. Max King is another hand, is a difficult one, because I think if you've got decent front row forward depth, like say Max King is your third guy. Like for me at the moment, he's actually my second guy because I don't own Payne Haas. Sorry, because I own Payne Haas, who's currently out. So again, Max King's got handy duel in a pretty dead front row forward spot. I feel like he's got better utility in that position at front row forward now that he has duel. Whereas Angus, I feel like you can move to other guys and not get hurt as much. Like you can move to say like a Murray when he's back, a Madison, maybe a Sean Lane this week. Maybe a Fafita if he comes back as well. I feel like there are options, whereas front row forward there's less so, which is again why I'm thinking I would maybe lean towards selling Angus ahead of maybe like a Max King. Even though Angus I would say is the better Supercoach option. Obviously money wise you get more money out of selling Angus. So that's my kind of spiel on sells. I know we're looking at the Pappenhausen slide, but I think it was I wanted to get that out there because I think a lot of people are going through the same deliberations about who to sell for round 17 guys. I think that's equally as important as who we're buying, right? So yeah, I think if I was looking at this list in terms of the ranking of who I would sell, from who I would sell first to who I wouldn't sell. So I think who I would sell first would probably be, I know Ezra's a bit of a different position, but I'd probably say Ezra, if it say specifically for getting Pappenhausen. Then I'd probably say Aitken, probably say Angus, probably say Max King, probably say Talakai, and then probably say Dungo. So hopefully that helps you guys out there if you're thinking about selling Angus or Dungo, selling Talakai or Angus. Hopefully that little order, based on all that kind of stuff that I was talking about, maybe gives you some help there. We'll definitely there's a lot of questions about 2RF. I'll definitely get to those in a little bit. Now some of the more difficult ones, also like Munster, Tedesco, Cleary, and Hynes. The Cleary ones are only really, I think, if you've got trades to say flip him back in straight away in round 19 for maybe Ezra Mann, because it looks like he could maybe get a rest in round 18. I don't mind the selling of Nico Hynes this week, to be honest, if you're selling Hynes to Pappenhausen and then you get Hynes straight back in round 18 for Ezra Mann. I think that's an okay play as well. Again, comes down to your trades. Can you flip it? Just bear in mind that you're going to want to get other guys in as well, like Grant, Tedesco, maybe Brian To'o like myself. So yeah, there's a few guys who I want to get back in. So I don't think I'm personally going to be doing this. I'll talk about this maybe a little bit more when I get to my own team as well. But yeah, I don't mind doing it in this particular week when you're going for your big high upside players like Pappenhausen. Just got to make sure you've kind of got a plan there. So Brods is saying Lodge signing for the Roosters as well may impact Angus's minutes. I don't think so, because Angus has been playing 80, but who has had to step up a lot is Takiaho. Because our middles have been kind of lacking in depth, we've had the Butchers kind of get concussions and stuff recently. Takiaho has really had to step up in terms of his minutes. I think he's the one who's going to have to reduce his minutes with Matt Lodge coming in. I don't think Angus is really going to get affected by that. So if I just take a look at Takiaho's minutes, just give me a second here. Yeah, so his minutes the last, since round 10 basically, or even round 9, minutes. Since round 11, he's played 57, 54, 80, 54, 64, and 68. He's been playing some big minutes recently. I think he's the one who's going to step back. I don't think Angus will necessarily. Fair concern though, but no, I don't think he's necessarily going to be the one who's impacted at the moment. Okay. Yeah, some questions about VC loophole. Yeah, I'm going to probably move off this section now. I think I've kind of said enough about that, hopefully, and helped you guys out with any sell questions. So another kind of topic I wanted to get into as well was Latrell. I haven't actually seen that many questions about Latrell or Tedesco, but it was kind of trending a lot on my Twitter. Do you buy Latrell this week, or do you wait a week and get Tedesco? Because I think a lot of people, if you are looking to sell Hynes this week, just for the week to get in one of these guys in, people are saying, do you get Latrell this week against the Knights, or do you wait for Tedesco the week after in round 18? For what it's worth, I think there was a couple of questions about this too. I don't think that Teddy will get rested in round 18. We've got a decent turnaround in terms of our backing up. So we play on this Saturday, and they're playing the Wednesday. Given that Teddy played the first Origin game, I feel like with the Roosters out of the top 8 and really wanting to chase, I feel like he was going to play. And don't forget, the Dragons are currently a top 8 team as well, who are in some decent form. So I think Tedesco will play. So I think, yes, he may get a rest, but yeah, I think what was interesting was looking at, I did something on Twitter as well, if you guys didn't see it, where I was looking at Latrell's scores against quote-unquote the big teams, and traditionally he's actually had a pretty good average against the bigger teams. It was around 72 so far for 2022, about 76 in 2021. This is when he's playing for a better Rabbitohs team though, so I wonder how much will that translate. Yes, he went really big last week against the Eels, but the Eels we've seen have been very up and down. So I feel like Eels on another day could completely outplay the Rabbitohs. So yes, he looked really good last week. I don't know how much I want to read into that. So yes, the draw is tough as well for the run home. For me, Tedesco is probably who I would still prefer. Even though he does miss round 17, the table that I've got next to them this is their average versus that particular opponent. Now, I would say that the Latrell scores probably are a little bit under to what he should be. Like, for example, a 59 average against the Bulldogs or 58 against the Knights. You're probably not going to expect him to actually score that. You'd probably think he would score, maybe 10, 20 points more, right? So if that was the case, in terms of the total points for the rest of the season, it's actually very, very close. So I think for me, then it comes down to, okay, if I don't actually think they're going to score that dissimilar for the rest of the season, who's the guy who might have a higher upside? I think that will probably be Tedesco. Tedesco has kind of looked threatening for a lot of weeks. Ever since I sold him, I've kind of regretted it because since people sold him, I think he went like 126 and then he got like a massive 144 against the Sharks. And I was really encouraged as well by the Roosters' performance against the Panthers. In a game where you'd say maybe not a lot went the Roosters' way, versus the best team away, he still managed to score like 66 points. He's just got a ridiculous floor. Like his lowest score all season is 28 and 32, which was against the Broncos and the Knights, which was, a bit of outlier games. After that, it's 50. So he's got a really high floor. He's obviously got the high ceiling and the better draw. For me personally, I think I'm still leaning Tedesco because I don't think he's going to get a rest. So I think for me, I probably want to get Tedesco next week. Don't mind going for Latrell this week, but you probably are not going with Tedesco if you buy Latrell this week. So again, kind of comes down to, are you pushing hard for round 17? Are you kind of behind the pack and want to chase? Or you're fine with your numbers and maybe you want to go safer with Tedesco? But I think I'm personally leaning on Tedesco for myself next week. So hopefully that gives people some food for thought as well who are looking at doing that. Obviously, Latrell is really popular this week. I think he'll go well this week. I kind of just prefer Tedesco, I think, for the run home. Okay, enough of that. So let's hopefully... Okay, so the next thing I wanted to get into was some of the round 17 nuffs. A lot of the guys who are looking to sell to raise funds. So I'm going to have a quick look and see if there's any questions on some of these nuffs here. I know there's a lot of team-specific questions. I'll definitely try to get to as many of them as I can, maybe at the back end when I'm talking a bit more about my team in general. I'll go through kind of the more hot topics and things first, and then after that I'm happy to obviously look at some specific team questions. So I wanted to kind of go through some of the nuff options. So there's a few guys that obviously have come up for round 17. So I've kind of tried to add some comments to them just to help maybe put some thinking behind them. So I would say if you're looking for like your straight one and done guys, so someone who you buy for this week and probably isn't going to play again for the rest of the season, you're probably looking at the bottom four guys here. So Jed Cartwright, Zach Hosking, that's how you pronounce it. Xavier Willison, he's named on the bench for the Broncos. The reason I've got him here is because even though he's named on the bench, he's actually got dual status. So that's something that's pretty handy if you are looking to nuff out. It's always nice to have someone who has dual status. And then you've got Justin Matamua from the Tigers as well. Again, he's a bench player, 2RF at 175k. I'd probably say Matamua is not the best one just straight off the bat because at the same price you can get Hosking, who's starting. There's just a better chance of minutes there. He's also... Hosking's got a better opponent that he's versing, you'd say, this week against the Dragons. And I think because he's got the start, I give him the edge over like a Matamua. So I'll probably kind of rule out Matamua. I think Hosking is a pretty good nuff because he's basement price. The con against him is obviously that he hasn't got dual status. But I do think that it's still worth, if you're like me, for example, I've got Talakai and Dungal in my 2RF. So I've already got a couple of 2RF center wing guys there. So for me, I wouldn't need to actually buy Jed Cartwright to get another dual player there because I've already got a couple that I can flip around. So I would take a look at your team, see, for example, if you don't have any dual players in your 2RF, it might make you think it's maybe worth spending the extra 30k on someone like a Cartwright to get the dual status. Only thing with him though is that I've labelled him as a one and done, but the Rabbitohs have got a lot of injuries in their forwards recently as well, so there could be a chance that he maybe hangs around for a little bit longer. But I don't think he'll be a massive AE issue. The bottom four guys probably won't be big AE issues. So for anyone who's new to SuperCoach, obviously that means auto emergency, which generally means if you've got these guys who come off for like 10, 15 minutes off the bench and they score like 10, 15 points, they kind of kill any chances for a vice captain loophole. So that's something to think about. I don't really use the VC loophole that much, so I'm not actually as concerned about that. So yeah, I don't mind going for someone who still maybe has a chance of sticking around. And that's Fanua Pole. I'm not 100% sure how you pronounce that. Now, he's probably the nuff that I'm actually going to get this week, just because I'm probably going to sell Payne Haas because I need to raise some funds, and Haas is going to be out for the next couple of weeks. He's all banged up. It's kind of sucky that he's sub 500k. I'm not going to get great value out of him, but for me, I don't have any duels to get someone in 2RF, so I have to buy enough in the front row forward. It kind of sucks that he doesn't have dual status, but for Pole, the benefit with him was that he played last week about 40 minutes, and I think he scored about 44 points, so he looked pretty good. And they had Alex Seyfarth playing last week, and then this week they've cut Alex Seyfarth for James Tarmile's return, but they've kept this guy, which makes me think maybe he's going to hang around a little bit. If he's someone who gets like 30, 40 points a week, even if it was 25 to 35, at a pinch, if I have to play him in my front row forward, fine. I may be losing out on 30, 40 points for one position for maybe once every other week. I can kind of live with that. And if he doesn't play, then he just becomes a straight enough in front row forward, which is I don't mind having enough in front row forward where I'm not going to really try to pack in too many players there. So I don't really mind him. Yes, he could be a potential AE, but I think he is a decent one, especially for like me and you don't really use the vice captain loophole that often. I don't mind going with Fanua Pole. Anyone out there who knows how to pronounce it, spell it out for me in the chat as well. So yeah, I think Fanua is probably the nuff that I'm probably going to go for this week. If I had to get another one, I don't even mind going for this Willison guy just because he's got dual status. But again, it comes down to you being it comes down to your team. It's very team dependent. The only other thing I wanted to say about nuffs was maybe how many you'd want to carry. Because just be conscious that a lot of us probably have bought Grant Anderson last week. There is a good chance that he also becomes a nuff. I already have Jack Howarth in my squad, so if I was to buy a Fanua Pole this week, that brings me to 3 nuffs, which I'm kind of thinking is around the upper limit of what I'd want. At an absolute max, I'd probably want 4 nuffs, but I think 3 is probably where I feel comfortable. So 3 is the kind of number of nuffs I think for the run home that I'm thinking is maybe okay. But I do want to think about it as well, because if I want to raise money next week for my trades, maybe to get Grant and Tedesco, I might need to get 2 nuffs in this week. But yeah, something to think about, because I think depth will be important. We're already seeing guys, this is probably the first instance we're seeing actually someone big ruled out with COVID. And then obviously Origin restings, it's been talked about with the Panthers next week. So depth is still important. So just be aware of that if you're not looking to go too hard on the nuffs here. Okay, next up. So getting onto the 2RFs. So there was a lot of questions about 2RFs. So I'm keen to get to this part as well. Definitely something I'm thinking a lot about this week myself. So let's have a look at some of the 2RF questions. So Ian, you had come very, very early in the chat. You had said Madison, Lane, or Jo'o this week for Angus or Talakai. So in terms of the Angus or Talakai, we kind of answered it. I'd probably just about sell Angus before Talakai, but it's a very, very close one. Now Madison, Lane, or Jo'o off Ngawi. So we'll quickly talk about the Eels boys first. Now, for the past few weeks, I've been set on buying Madison for round 17 because he was killing it the last few weeks and I didn't own him. Even coming off the bench, he was going massive, right? They've got a really good matchup this week as well with the West Tigers. The only thing, he's expensive, right? He's 678k and he's got this rib issue. I always hear NRL Physio, he's the man to go to for all this kind of stuff. He always talks about rib cartilage ones as being kind of painful injuries that can kind of have an impact on their output. They might not take as many runs, maybe don't make as many tackles. Now, I think he did mention that Madison, because he's now had 2 weeks off, the pain management side of things, it might not be as bad as what it would be if, say, for example, Madison played last week, got the injury, and then was playing this week. That might have more of an effect. but there's enough kind of doubt in my head that's making me think I might not go Maddison. Another thing as well is that this is more of a specific thing for my own team. So I'm ranked 4,500. Maddison, I want to say, is quite highly owned already. So I'll have a quick look. Actually, quick shout out as well to SE Playbook. I need to go to their Stat HQ because I believe they've started posting the true ownership stats of players, which is where obviously the SuperCoach website will say maybe Maddison. Let's say hypothetically Maddison. If I can bring up the website, apologies. Bit of a delay here on my flow. So I'm just going to quickly look up what the ownership is for Ryan Maddison. So I want to use this as a bit of an example and see how this tool actually works as well, because I've heard quite good things about it. I haven't really had a chance to play around with it. So yeah, Ryan Maddison at the moment, he's in 11% of teams. So not super highly owned, but definitely got decent ownership. But I feel like all the top teams probably own him already. So I'm quickly looking on the SC Hub one. So yeah, if you look at points, you look at predictions. I'm trying to see where you can find like the true ownership percentage. Oh, ownership. Okay, it says ownership 10%. I'll have to play around this. I'll have to play around with this a little bit more because I can't quite find it at the moment. But my feeling is, to get to the point, Maddison is probably quite highly owned in the top like 100, top 1,000, top 5,000. If I feel like I want to break into that a little bit more, I kind of want to go for more of the pod. I'm kind of thinking Sean Lane. He's got the same 5-round average as Maddison. I also own Dylan Brown, and I think having both Lane and Dylan Brown who kind of play on the same side, so if I can get Dylan Brown doing well, there's a good chance that Sean Lane does well too. He's playing 80 minutes. I don't think his average is 63 over the season, which is pretty solid as well. His base has really stepped up as well the last 2 weeks. So you can see here, his base power is obviously a lot less than Maddison. Maddison's 65, Lane's 49, so call it 50. If you look at the last 5 weeks, so Sean Lane's his base, this is just straight base, no base power, 56, 49, 55, 46, and 54. Like, that's a really solid floor, I think, for a 2RF. He is a bit expensive at 613k, but not quite as expensive as Maddison. Yeah, I'm looking at him thinking, like, with Tigers and Warriors, like, on the edges there, I think they could do damage. I'm thinking he's got the upside. You know, he's kind of maybe similar to, like, your Kickow. Not quite a Homoli, because Homoli's just, like, on another level, in my opinion, in terms of, like, general tackle breaking and everything. But similar to your kind of Kickow. So I'm thinking for my own team, I think I want to kind of take the pod here, because the numbers are good. Playing for a good team, I think that he's playing 80 minutes. He's been playing 80 minutes the last 5 weeks as well. He had a few games where he was playing about 62, 60, and 72, but last 5 weeks he's playing big minutes. So yeah, I'm kind of thinking at my rank, I might just take Sean Lane. So to answer your question, Ian, Maddison or Lane, like, I think Maddison is fine, but it's just this injury, rib injury. I'm thinking Sean Lane. It's also, I don't know, maybe it's the excitement of a pod, but I'm kind of feeling excited about buying Sean Lane, and I feel like this is a game. Maybe I want to buy him. Like, for example, Joe Offengawi, like, he's been great. He's been killing it. A 3-round average of 75, 5-round of 74. It just doesn't excite me. I don't know. It just doesn't excite me. I know we shouldn't be biased, but yeah, I don't know. He's playing big minutes. He played 69 minutes last week. He had a base of 74, which is insane. The draw is tough though, like Parramatta, Panthers, and then the Cowboys. So Tim Williams, again, shout out to him, made a great point that if you've got these kind of games where, you know, teams might pile on points against the Tigers, the ball is not as much in play. Does he tackle as much? Maybe not. Like, look, I know he scored big last week, but I feel like he's more likely to get you your 60 to 65s. I feel like I prefer Maddison and Lane to Offengawi. That's my opinion. And I'm thinking Sean Lane. I don't know what to tell you. I think I'm thinking Sean Lane. So anyone who's asking about, you know, your 2RFs, Maddison or Lane, I think Maddison or Lane is the big question. I'm thinking Sean Lane. I can't believe I would never have said this in a million years in the preseason. But yeah, I'm thinking of Sean Lane. Shout out as well to Brew and the Whisperer. I think Brew had some stuff to say about Sean Lane preseason, I believe it was. And he's come out and actually been like a decent Supercoach option as well, which is quite funny. yeah, like often Gowie scores. I'm looking at scores though, 87, 55, 83, 55, 88. He's got some good scores in there. He's an option. He's got dual. He's got the dual, which is really helpful. But I'm personally more excited by Sean Lane. I don't know what to tell you. If you're going a bit cheaper, I've got Barnett and Kolomatangi. Barnett had a bit of a lower game last week. I think he scored around 46. I think Kolomatangi scored around 50, 58. But I think I'd prefer going for one of these other guys above them. Obviously, if you haven't got the budget, Barnett or Kolomatangi, you can go for one of them. Kolomatangi's probably got slightly higher upside than, say, someone like a Barnett. Only thing with Barnett, he might goal kick because Texwell was so bad at them. So Barnett, he might have that in his favour. It's a bit of a 50-50 call. Barnett got that HIA last week, so I was going to have a think and see what his minutes were like, but I don't think it will really give an accurate picture when he played 78 minutes. I thought he got a HIA. Maybe it was just before halftime. So he was basically setting to play 80 minutes with a base of 48, which is pretty solid. Just going to look at Kolomatangi, what he did last week. Yeah, Kolomatangi had base of 56. If Kolomatangi last 3 weeks actually has had base of 59, 45, and 56. So he's actually kind of stepped it up a little bit. Now that I'm looking at that, I'm thinking maybe Kolomatangi is not that much more expensive than him, but he's playing, you'd say, for a better team. Maybe Latrell being back is actually going to be good for him. Don't forget, when Latrell was fit beginning of the season, that's kind of when Kolomatangi was having his good scores. So that might be something to think about as well if you're going for a more cheap option. I think last week I said Barnett, but think about that a little bit more. I'm actually thinking maybe switching to Kolomatangi instead of Barnett. Mitchell, to answer your question, thoughts on running both Lane and Madison? Yeah, I think if I could get Lane and Madison this week, I probably would have. Because I do think that both of them would be really good this week. But I'm just thinking Sean Lane for this week if I had to just get one of them. Okay, let's get on to some market watch. But maybe what I'll do, I'll quickly pause and take a look at some of your questions. Actually, sorry, I'll go through this. I'll dedicate some time to questions. Otherwise, I'll be going back and forth as well. And also, guys, if you're enjoying the stream, give it a like if you are enjoying it. We've already kind of spoken about, I think, about the main sells and buys this week, so I don't really need to go into it too much, I believe. There's just maybe a couple of guys in the buy list that I might want to touch on. So, for example, like Brandon Smith in number 4. I really don't like the Brandon Smith buy. I feel like he's not been very good overall this season. I know he scored well last week, but if you're looking at him, say, as a downgrade, I'd rather just go a little bit cheaper. Or like just go straight to a nuff, maybe, potentially. Like, I don't think, the duel's handy, but I think he's not really shown enough. What I'm hearing from people who own him is that they kind of can't wait to get rid of him, so that maybe gives you some indication as to why maybe you shouldn't buy him. I'm not a big fan of that one personally. Alex Johnson, we should speak about him as well. So he's obviously been killing it. I think he scored like 400 plus games in like the last 6 weeks, something insane. He's also looked a lot better in terms of like even his base. He based 36 last week, and I've never seen Alex Johnson have that much base before. But there was some talk about him potentially being out this week. There's some doubts, I think, with the quad. And I think at his price, 695k, I think they play the third game of the week. If you've got doubts and you don't have that information, I feel like it is risky to be buying someone like Alex Johnson this week. Last one is Nelson. So Nelson at front row forward 2RF. To be honest, I have not really thought about him too much, so I can't probably really comment on him too much. I'm just having a quick look at his scores. Like, he scored 81 last week with a try, but prior to that, his scores were like 40. He had a 14, 26. He had a 76 with a try, but like 48, 36. Like, just not a lot of great scores there. I feel like at that price, it's a bit awkward as well at 385k. So yeah, again, it's one of those ones I'm not really a massive fan of if people are looking at having him for like a downgrade. Now, let's go on to some sells. So Karaz and Campbell Graham we kind of spoke about already. Haven't really spoken about Payne Haas a lot, whether he's like a massive sell or not. So, look, 482k is an awful price for him. I'm probably selling him this week because I was half thinking, do I sell him or do I maybe sell, like my kind of dilemma was, I can sell Payne Haas for a front row forward nuff, or I can sell maybe someone like a Aiken for a 2RF nuff. I'm thinking maybe I just sell Haas because at least those other guys like Aitken, Thungle, Angus, they're still fit and they're still playing, so there can still be some decent depth, whereas Haas will be out for the next couple of weeks. He's banged up. Yes, he might come back and start punching out like 60s to 70s again, but even last week he played 65 minutes and scored 58, which is just not the normal output that we get from Payne Haas. So I feel like it's annoying to be selling him at this cheap price, but I feel like for me, he probably is an okay sell. I don't mind holding him. It's just for my own team. I feel like he's one of my better sell candidates for this week. So again, I think it's really team dependent. You know, if you've got other guys like Campbell Graham to sell instead of Payne Haas, then I'd say, yeah, do that. But I think it's, again, team dependent. I think Tedesco at number 5 on this list was a bit surprising. I'm guessing a lot of people are selling Tedesco for Latrell, but like I said earlier, I probably would prefer Tedesco to Latrell for the run home. So like maybe if you're doing Tedesco to Pappenhausen and then getting Tedesco back next week via, say, like an Ezra Mann, I can kind of get that as well because Pappenhausen's Pappenhausen. But for that one, I'm not really as keen on that move myself, but I get if people are looking to chase really hard for round 17. Suwali, Benchovic, Tamara Martin, I think those are all okay sells. Talakai is a little bit low on the list and say like an Angus. I'd maybe think that Talakai is just with a dual, really nice run home, could be worth it. And he's got a decent base as well. He's got 54, so it could be handy in your 2RF. Okay, we'll quickly get on to some vice-captaincy things. Obviously, we don't really need to think too much about Nico Hynes now that he's ruled out. So for me, VC Pappenhausen, I think that's pretty obvious. What I'll probably would say, so in terms of what kind of score would I look to go for a vice-captain? So basically, for anyone who's not aware, this week is basically you get a free shot at the vice-captain loophole. So for me, for a vice-captain score, I'd probably say about, if Pappenhausen scored 75, I'd probably loop that. You also may find in your teams that there's not a lot of great options after the first game with Pappenhausen. You know, you probably have to go maybe someone from like the Eels against Tigers, maybe a Dylan Brown, a Moses, or an IPAP. Maybe if you've got Cody Walker, you can maybe go for them against the Knights. But I think Pappenhausen's the big one. And we're probably all going to hope that he just gets like 130 and we can just make the decision to loop him very easy. I haven't mentioned him here as well. I can see Cameron, you've just said it as well in the chat. Lomax captain as a pod. Now, the reason I'm not really thinking about, I own Lomax. The reason I'm not really thinking about it is that I'm not seeing the Dragons. Look, I know the week before they scored like 30 something points against the Rabbitohs, but Lomax I don't think has scored over 100 at all so far this season. Now, you can either say he's due or he's just not quite got the ceiling that we were once used to. He scored 93 and 98, so close enough. Goal kicking helps, but I don't see Broncos as a weak team. That's the thing. I see them as a pretty strong team. They are losing a lot of guys, though, this week. But again, Dragons are without Ben Hunt. So I think both teams are equally going to be not as strong as each other. And I just think the team he's versing is a pretty decent defensive team, as per the numbers so far this season. So he definitely would be a pod. He's got really good base, like 38. Goal kicking obviously gets it up to about 50. I just don't know if I've got the faith in him that he can crack like an 80, 90 plus with ease. He's been more hovering around the 60s so far this season. That's the only reason why I'm not thinking about Lomax as a pod captain at the moment, nor anyone else really in that Broncos-Dragons game. I feel like it's a bit of a harder game to call. You could maybe consider Ezra Mann. But yeah, I think around a score of 75, I'd probably say is fine for a loop for a vice-captain this week. 80 plus, I'd probably say, yeah, just take it. If it's in the 60s, I'd probably just leave it. So me, for example, I'm probably going to captain Dylan Brown. He's generally got a pretty safe floor of about 50. And then, so I think if Pappenhausen hypothetically came out and scored like 65 points, I'd probably just keep it on Dylan Brown and hope that he has got the upside against someone like the Tigers. Okay, so that's all the stuff in terms of planned content. I will quickly just jump to my team as well. Let me quickly bring that up. So I'll quickly chat through what I'm looking to do this week. And then we're about 45 minutes in, so I'll take about 5 minutes on what I'll do for my team. I'll definitely spend about 10-15 minutes just answering your questions. I know you guys have been really patient. I've seen a lot of questions come through from the corner of my eye, so definitely want to try to get to them as many as I can. Just bear with me for about 5 minutes and we'll definitely get to them as well. So yeah, in terms of what I'm looking to do for my team this week, so I've got 12 trades and I've still got a boost. So the way that I was, obviously Pappenhausen's a guy I really want to get in. So I'm going to sell Karaz to get Pappenhausen. So I'll take out Karaz, and then via duel, so I'll swap Joey Miners to fullback, and then I'll get Paps that way. So I need to free up about 170k. So the way that I'll do that is probably nuff out Payne Haas. I could nuff out someone like a Ewan Aiken instead, but I think I feel like I want to maybe just get Payne Haas out there, and that's the thing as well with Fanua. If he hangs around and is like a bench option, scores 30 to 35 each week, I'll take it. Front row forward is definitely a bit light though. Max King is going to be my second front row forward with IPAP for the foreseeable future. But I'm just hoping that, Max King, if he keeps punching out 55 to 60, I can kind of just rely on that. But so that would probably be the main way that I would be getting in Paps. So it would only take me a couple of moves, so it's not too difficult. So that's about 130k. But I want to do more than that this week. So in terms of current numbers, I think I'd be on about 11 or 10 actually. Now that we're taking out Nico Hynes, I'd have McInnes 1, IPAP, Leo Thompson, Fanupol 3, 4. I would have no one in my 2RF. I would have Ezra 5, Dylan Brown 6, Mulatalo 7, Lomax 8, Tass 9, Anderson 10, and then Pappenhausen 11. So I'd be on 11 with those two trades. So what I'd probably try to do then is get in one of the 2RFs that we're speaking about. Probably I'm thinking Sean Lane at the moment. So I can sell Ewan Aiken for him. And I can afford that. I can't afford directly Aiken to Lane. If I wanted to get Madison, I'd have to sell Crichton probably, because I can afford it directly then in one move. But I'm happy enough with Sean Lane. I think I'm fine to get rid of Aiken. He's been really good for me, but I think it's time to get on the Lane train, as someone said in the chat. So that would be how I'd get Sean Lane. Now, I would appreciate you guys' opinions as well on this. So that would be for 3 trades. So I still haven't used my boost, and that would leave me on 9 trades. So I'll just quickly complete trades, because I'm pretty sure I think this is what I'll do to get in the Lane trade. Pappy VC. Dylan Brown will be the captain. Just making sure I haven't missed any reserves. Oh, Sean Lane has to get in there. Get in, son. For Newpole, I'll have to reserve him. And so that would be kind of my team. So the one thing I'm thinking about is, do I do a double nuff? Because I don't actually have that much money in the bank. I've got 29k. And next week, what I'm thinking of doing is selling McInnes for Harry Grant. So Grant is about, how much is he? Because I think Grant will probably also play and back up for the Storm, because they're also not really in the most comfortable position. So 621k with a break-even of 96. So let's say hypothetically Grant next week is, well, he won't change the price. Obviously, he's not going to go down a price. So Grant next week will be 621k. McInnes is also got a higher break-even. So I would need to have a gap of about, there'd be at least, call it maybe 100k. I would need to fork out to go from McInnes to Grant. So I'm short about 70k already of that. So then, but I also want to get in Tedesco next week. Tedesco, I think, is about 680k. Ezra Mam, to him, will require a lot of money as well. So I'm thinking about doing a double nuff. So yeah, Cameron, you've said the exact same thing that I'm thinking about. Double nuff to free up dollars to get Grant and Teddy in next week. The only issue with me going another nuff is that it means I've got 4. I'd have Jack Howarth, Fanua Pole, maybe Grant Anderson, and then maybe one of the Hoskins or the Willison types. And so this was my concern as well, was that if I wanted to sell, based on that whole kind of sell matrix that I was talking about, I'd have to sell Angus probably for a 2RF. I could sell one of my center wings via duels, but I'm not selling any of my round 17 guys, nor am I going to sell Garrick, Manu, or Taylor May. So it has to be one of my 2RFs that I think I'm going to have to sell. So by that logic, I'd have to sell Angus, but it doesn't feel great, which is kind of why I'm thinking, do I just leave it? But then my issue is then next week, how do I free up funds? That's kind of my main decision at the moment is, do I do this last fourth trade and try to free up more funds? Like I could maybe get someone cheaper than Sean Lane, maybe like a Kolomatangi, but I kind of want Lane. I like the Eels the next two games. So I kind of want to go hard on that. Like maybe I sacrifice Angus, or maybe I sacrifice Talakai. It's difficult. You guys can tell I'm clearly not 100% on it. Talakai, if he doesn't back up for Origin, that's 2 games in a row. So he's got the handy duel. Let's say hypothetically I sold Angus. Liam, yes, I could boost next week. The reason I'm thinking about maybe boosting this week is that because you can get the nuff in this week who'll actually play this week, and they can chip in with like an extra 30-40 points. That's kind of why I'm thinking of doing it this week. I could do it next week for sure. But that's the reason why I'm thinking of doing it this week, is that I can get in someone who will play this week and just get an extra number in. So that's why I'm thinking maybe doing the last one. Because then if I did that, let's say hypothetically, I mean, I could get this Willison guy, because then I could actually have duels with Max King and him, 2 front row forward. So that's one thing I could do. But let's say, for example, I just get this Zach Hosking guy because he's starting. Let's say I do that trade. Yeah, Sticky Nicky, you've basically said what I've just said. So yeah, doing the double nuff this week, because at least you're getting value out of the nuffs as they'll play. Yeah, exactly. That's kind of one thing you're doing it. So then I'm just kind of trying to think a week ahead. So that would mean that my team would be having 400k in the bank. So lots of money. Only 8 trades left, so not a lot. Not a lot of trades there. But realistically, the only things I would have to do at this point is maybe get another 2RF, maybe definitely get Harry Grant, and probably get Tedesco. So that's 3 trades I would need to do. Let's add in an extra one to free up funds. So that's 4 trades. And then the only thing I might need to do is get in like Toto. So yeah, trades are running thin. This is why I'm having such a dilemma as to, do I do the double nuff this week? Because if I do the nuffing this week of Angus, I have 400k in the bank. So McInnes to Grant can happen, no worries. Based on that math I was saying earlier, that leaves me with about 300k, which should be enough to go Ezra Mam to Tedesco. Because Ezra Mam's he might lose a bit in price. Tedesco is 688k. Yeah, it's cutting it fine. But I might be able to do Grant and Tedesco in next week. So that means my team would be Pappenhausen and Tedesco at fullback. I'd have Munster, Dylan Brown at 5'8". I would have Cleary and Hynes as halfback. So I think I've already got the 3. I think I've got the best combos in those positions, in my opinion. And then I would have Grant and Coruscant, which I think is pretty solid as well. And then, yes, 2RF, I'd have to play Olukwatu. Sean Lane and Olukwatu I'd play every week. And then I'd rotate one of, say, Talakai and Thungal, which feels okay for me as well. So, because 2RF is it's a bit of a strange position. So yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I might just be able to get away with it, but I'm not sure. I'm not super comfortable on the selling Angus for enough. I appreciate all the feedback. So Peter, you're saying 9 trades left is a disaster. I'm really conscious of the trade situation, but I'm thinking of going really hard at this week. Go for the pod in Sean Lane, get in the nuff like Hosking, for Nua. I definitely wouldn't get any more nuffs, like that's for sure. I would have 3 or 4 at that point. And I know Angus can still hit out some good scores as well. I'm a bit all over the place. I'm not really sure if I even do the other nuff. Unfortunately, there's no other good front row forward nuff. Otherwise, I maybe could sell Max King instead. But then my front row forward would be really, really weak. So yeah, that's my current trade thinking. It just depends. Do I want to go harder this week, get the nuffs in, and get the ability to get Grant and Tedesco in next week, but sacrifice like an Angus? That's where I'm at with my team. Anyway, that went on for a little bit longer than I thought. Appreciate all the feedback. All right, let's get to more of your questions, because I think I've been neglecting those for the stream. So we've been going for about 55 minutes. So yeah, let's do about 10 minutes of your questions. So I will start firing them questions in. I'll have a scroll up as well. And one last thing on my team. I'm just trying to see what numbers I'd have. I'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I'd have 13 for this week, which I think feels okay. It feels like at least above par. So it could be a decent week in that sense. Yeah, so that's me. Anyway, enough about that. I'll sleep on it. Okay, who do I think scores most this week out of Cartwright, Paul, and Hosking? Cartwright, is that Bryce Cartwright? Is it Cardi Party? I can't even remember if he's playing in the 17, is he? Let me look at team lists. Cartwright. Is that Bryce Cartwright? He's not even in the 17. Mate, I must be thinking of someone else. Sorry, Cassidy. I can't remember. Paul and Hosking. I mean, the thing is, even these nuffs like Hosking, yes, they might play 80 minutes, but on the edge, they may still only score 30, 35. So I'd probably just about say Fanua, based on the evidence that he scored 44 last week. Jed Cartwright, of course. Jed Cartwright. Such an idiot. Thanks everyone for calling it out. You can see my brain's talking about my team and my trade situations got my brain all fried up. Jed is also starting, isn't he? Kind of depends on the bench, eh? Let's have a look at so Rabbitoh's bench. So Rabbitoh's bench is... So they've got Cody Nikorima, Blake Taff, Cheekham, and Davey Moali. So I think Moali's a prop. Cheekham can play edge from memory. So he may take minutes of Jed Cartwright. But even then, Mark Nichols, he's named in 13, but I'm pretty sure he was also not 100%. He's got some concussion protocols to go through. So I think Jed and Zach are both going to get like probably equivalent scores. Jed's got the better matchup, may go over for a try. The Broncos bench is Corey Pakes, Reece Kennedy, Xavier Willison, and Tyson Gamble. So again, pretty light bench. That I can't really... I honestly, I don't know. I think they're both going to get decent minutes. Yeah. Flip a coin, mate. Flip a coin. Random plug as well. I've been reading a lot of books recently, which is good. Reading this book called Predictably Irrational, which is a great book. The chapter that I'm on is about options and how if you have too many options, sometimes it costs you what you actually need to be focusing on. This is one of those things where the amount of time and deliberation about, Cartwright or Hosking, you could have actually used your time more valuable. Just pick one and leave it. Probably didn't explain that very well, but you kind of get what I'm saying. Sometimes the amount of, look, I'm a good example of that. The amount of time I spent on my team, I probably should have spent less time about that and have more time on more important stuff. But SuperCoach is important. Let's see. Thoughts on Angus to Hosking. Cooler to Tarpany. I don't like buying Tarpany this week just because, Cooler is not even playing this week either. I would just leave it, Isaac. I think you can do that next week. I guess what you're saying is because you probably don't have a boost, so you're going McInnes to Grant and then Graham to Tedesco next week. So yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I get what you're saying. If you don't have the boost, then yeah, you can just do the move this week. So I guess in that context, yeah, I can kind of live with that decision. Yep. Graham to Mulatalo. So yeah, in terms of the guys to replace Graham with, I don't know if he probably still is one of the best centre wings for this week to replace Graham. But given that there's no Nico Hynes, I think that could affect him. But again, you're probably not going to look for just this week. You're also looking for the longer term. So I probably would say Mulatalo is the best. Don't even completely rule out just downgrading as well to Tass. Tass looks like he's going to have a good long stint now in the team. Do have a tough run home, but he's cheap, 314k. So that is also an option if you are looking to make some money or generate some funds in selling him. But yeah, I think Mulatalo is good. If you want to go for a bit of a cheaper option, I don't even mind Katoa. Katoa's actually outperformed him the last few weeks, despite Jesse Ramian. Someone, I think, earlier in the chat asked a few times about Jesse Ramian as a pod. I really don't like Jesse Ramian as a pod because you can clearly see that the Sharks' attack is devoted to getting the tries for the wingers via the sweep plays. Ramian, his decision-making is not very good in terms of when to pass to Katoa. He'll pass it to him when he's on the ground when the ball goes out of the sideline, or he doesn't pass and tries to go himself and gets tackled. I feel like Ramian's not really going to get the attack stats. He's got decent base, but I think you want these higher upside wingers in my opinion. So yeah, don't mind Katoa as well for a bit of a cheaper option, who's probably more of a pod as well. How many players will be average for this week in the top 1K? Morgan, I'm not 100% sure. We'd need to get that stats article from Adam Jerusi. Might have to send him a message, actually. My guess would be about... now that everyone's probably lost Nico Hynes as well, I would have said 12, so I'm probably going to say about 11 now. 10 to 11, I think, will be average. Top 1K might go a little bit harder and get 13. So I think if you're sitting on like 10 to 11, you're probably okay. Any higher, you're probably doing just about fine. Pablo saying, thoughts on Karaz to Paps? That's what I'm doing. Max King to Pole, and either Crichton or Talakai to Jed. Yeah, I don't mind those combination of moves. I guess it sounds very similar to me. Karaz to Paps, I'm doing Haas to Pole. And then yeah, one of maybe Crichton or Talakai to Jed. I'm really torn on the Crichton or Talakai one. Talakai has been he's been an annoying one, eh? Angus is still a genuine gun. I'm really 50-50 on the sell thing. Hopefully I do a lockout stream tomorrow as well in terms of Q&A. Hopefully I've got my thoughts straight by then. So yes, make sure you just look out for that tomorrow evening as well. But no, I think overall as a set of trades, Pablo, I think I don't mind those. Very similar to what I'm doing. John's asking, will you do FPL videos again this season? Yeah, so FPL's gone live as of like 3 a.m. this morning, Sydney time. I'm not 100% sure yet, John. I would like to. I really enjoy getting into the FPL content. I just need to see... Work's been really busy recently, and I think trying to do both this and FPL can be a bit challenging at times. So I'm not 100% decided yet. Excuse me. Will Munster return after Origin 3? Let me repeat that question again. Will Munster return after Origin 3? Yeah, so reports from today were that he trained fine. Looks like he's right to go for Origin 3. And I think, given that the Storm play, I think on Sunday, after Origin, I would say he's probably going to be back fit for round 18. Yeah, so they play on the 17th of July versus the Raiders. So yeah, that's another reason why I'm thinking maybe just holding Munster as well this week for myself. Sell Haas or Cooler. Isaac, probably... tough one. I would say Cooler just because he's probably not going to be in your top 17. Haas still has potential to be that. Josh, reply to my messages. Mate, can't you see him on a stream? Oh, okay. Yeah, you've sent a few messages. I'll get to them for sure. Man, do you have Instagram so I could show you my team? I don't have Instagram specifically for NRL SuperCoach. Hit me up on Twitter. I'll put a link for my Twitter in the chat. 1 second. Yeah, do follow me on Twitter, guys. If you don't already, just post random musings and stuff there. Hey, mate. Hey, Aman. Love the streams. Been watching all year. Thank you so much, Ian. Thoughts on your trades of Angus, Munster, and Graham out for Oates, Latrell, and Lane. Ooh, Corey Oates. Now that's an interesting one. He's actually been doing pretty well, hasn't he, recently? Let's have a look at his scores. Maybe we need to give him some thought. Bit of a pod. He definitely would be a pod. Yeah, wow. Okay, so he's got a 3-round average of 67 and a 5-round average of 67. So his scores since round 9: 63, 94, 77, 55, 33, 70, and 99. That's pretty good. I really don't mind that. 543k. If you are looking for a pod, honestly, if you're thinking pod, say you're selling Graham, like his run is good. Dragons, Titans, Parramatta, who can concede points, and then the Tigers, Roosters, Newcastle, Melbourne fine, but then Para and Dragons. Like Broncos have a pretty good run home, apart from maybe the games against like Melbourne and the Roosters. Honestly, I don't mind that. He's a bit expensive at 543k, but you know what? I really don't mind that. I really don't mind that. I know selling Munster's not ideal. Yeah, I'm guessing you're selling Munster for Latrell. As long as you've got a plan to get Munster back, I think that's okay. And yeah, Lane in for Angus. On the whole, I think that's probably okay as well. You should do an FPL pod with the FPL Whisperer. From what I remember, FPL Whisperer had Captain Sancho for like the last 15 weeks of the season, so I'm not sure if I want to trust him for FPL advice. I'm just kidding, mate. I'll always turn to the FPL Whisperer for any knowledge of random obscure European footballers that I don't know anything about. Should you trade out Lolo or Angus for Hosking? Oh god, Lolo's got that handy duel. His scores have been kind of fine. That's a tough one. Tough one. 56, 57 last couple of weeks for Lolo. Oh, that is such a tough one. Similar price as well. I'd probably just about to say Angus because Lolo's got duel, which is pretty handy. But I'm not super confident. You should make an Insta account for this and post extracts of your videos. Yeah, I've thought about doing something where I post more shorter form content, even on like TikTok. I could do my poems on TikTok as well. Anyone who's thinking that's a decent idea, let me know. I just don't really have time to like sit and kind of edit and extract the stuff out and put it onto account. I just too much other stuff going on at the moment, but I'll think about it. Hey man, Latrell or AJ? Oh, definitely Latrell, just because goal kicking, and looks like there's some doubt over AJ, and he's also more expensive than Latrell. So if you're going for one of those two, I'd definitely say Latrell. Pori's asking, is Pappy a must this round? Yeah, definitely. I think if you go to the beginning of the stream, I was talking a lot about Pappenhausen. For me, he is basically a must, in my opinion. Essentially, it's without Hynes, he's going to be the most highly vice-captained. So if he goes big, majority of the game is going to loop him. If you don't own him, that's really, really going to hurt. I think he's a must-have guy for the rest of the season. And a week like this where the player pool is so limited, he's one of the few guys who generally can get like 150 plus. For me, he's a must-have. Yeah, Ian, I don't think you need to justify anymore. I quite like the Oates selection, actually. Plays Titans next week. They conceded 5 tries to left wingers to Edric. Yeah, I don't mind that, Ian. It's a really interesting shout there, actually. I've definitely not considered him at all, but yeah, really interesting one. Frizzell in for King round 17 and long term. I feel like Frizzell is kind of like Like, I feel like selling King... If you're going to sell him, I'd like to get like maybe like an upgrade to like your Madison types, your Lanes, your Tarpanies. I feel like Frizzell is just a kind of on the tier below that. Like he'll be fine, but like his base, I feel like has been a bit down. Like if you look at the last last week was a bit of a strange one. He only had a base of 38 in 77 minutes. Like his scores are okay, but a 58 average is not that bad, but I feel like, I'd rather... He's cheap. He's 480k. Nah, I feel like Max King is delivering around the same. So I think just for the 1 week, I probably wouldn't think it's worth it. Why is everyone trading Hynes? I haven't actually seen the market since this Hynes news. Is he made it to the top trade outs? Surely not. No, he hasn't yet. Mainly because people are looking, say for example, it's a very easy switch, Hynes to Pappenhausen, and then you can go from Ezra Mam back to Hynes next week. So it's more just about trying to get the higher upside guy in for this week. I don't think people who are going to be selling him are realistically going to be selling it for the long term. Charles says, hey, first time watching NRL this year and playing SuperCoach, loving it. Oh, awesome that you're loving it. Coming second in the Friends League, that's good. Would Haas, Talakai, Graham, Drinkwater for Lane, Cartwright, Manu and Paps be good? So a few things to unpack there. So Drinkwater is an interesting one. Haven't really spoke about him. I kind of actually would like Drinkwater as a hold. He's got a really, really nice run home for the rest of the season. So if you have a look at the Cowboys run home, so I'll just quickly find, I'll chuck up Reece Robson. But if you look at the run home, they've got Sharks, Tigers, Dragons, Bulldogs, really good games there. Roosters and the Warriors, again, decent games. Rabbitohs, like these are all teams that can concede points apart from Panthers in round 25. I think Drinkwater, he could also be goal kicking in round 18 because they've got the Friday game. Let's say hypothetically Val Holmes doesn't play, doesn't back up after Origin. Drinkwater's probably goal kicking. So again, it becomes a good option in that week. So I'm actually thinking if you have Drinkwater, I'd maybe just considering holding him. And so I'm guessing you're maybe selling Drinkwater for, unless if you're selling Drinkwater for Paps, then I'd say do it. Graham out for Jed Cartwright. Graham out for Manu. You don't need to be buying Manu this week. I definitely like Manu as a buy next week. This week, I feel like you don't need to do it. You can just hold Graham for this week if you had to, and he's a guy that you really want. Or you can go for a round 17 guy. Yeah, I don't mind doing Haas and Talakai to Lane and Jed Cartwright. I'm still not sure about the whole selling Talakai or Angus. Really all over the place. But yeah, generally like Drinkwater for Paps. If that's the move, I'd say yeah, that's probably fine, Charles. Centre wing Justin Olam, yes or no? Not really too keen on Olam. I feel like the centres for Melbourne don't really get great scores. He gets the occasional game where he can do big, but I don't think it's going to happen too often. Like, don't forget as well, like, yes, he scored 69 points last week, but he got that try at the right end of the game. If you look at his scores before that, like 39, 53, 27, 28, 34, 32, there's not really much there that I'm liking there. Centering as well as a position I think is really stacked. Like, I think the slots that you use up there is really important. You know, like I think Garrick, Manu, Taylor May, Brian To'o, Mulatalo. There's a couple other guys I probably could mention. They're all really big options in that centering position. I feel like I wouldn't want to be using up too many spots with like someone like Olam, who's kind of in the mid range. So I don't really love the Olam trade in. I can trade Latrell in, but it means I'd have to have Sawali as your fourth center wing instead of AJ. What do you think? Sawali's not been a bad option to play. He's got decent base, so I think you can just about get away with him as a fourth center wing. It's not ideal. Like, I just rattled off a few names there who I think are genuine top 4 or 5 options. So yeah, just have a think of Fowler about, you know, what's going to do for the rest of your team impact-wise. I'd prefer to not have Sawali as a full center wing, but if it gets in Latrell this week and you bank like heaps of points, probably don't mind it. Okay, let's answer a couple more questions and then we'll wrap it up in a couple of minutes as well. The only way you can get in Pappy is if you sell Angus or Talakai for Hoskins or a dud, etc. Yeah, Pori, if you go to the beginning of the stream after it ends, we spoke quite a lot about Pappenhausen. Who would you sell for Pappenhausen? The order of selling people as well. That should hopefully answer your question, but I generally don't think that you need to worry about that. I would sacrifice one of Angus or Talakai if that meant you got Pappenhausen in. Sandy saying, should you still hold Isaiah Yeo or is it time to go? Was a bit of a poem for you. No, I think if you've held Yeo this entire time, I'd probably just hold because he's a good option. Yes, although he may miss round 18. So I think there's just about enough window to sell him. You can get someone like, say, hypothetically Sean Lane or Madison. They've got the Tigers and Warriors the next 2 weeks when Isaiah Yeo might be out. So I'd probably just about say it's worth selling him, but not a must sell, especially if you've held for this long. Alright, we'll do one more question. Michael kind of already addressed that question on Olam. Aman, am I crazy in thinking Pappy in the stopping weight with no Grant and Munster might only get a sub 70 score? Looking to wait one more week and swap for Walker who's playing a genuine bad team. I kind of get what you're saying, but last week also, don't forget, they didn't have Munster. Yes, they had Grant and Hughes, but they didn't have Munster. They are playing a weakened team now as well in the Sharks without Nico Hynes. But for all the reasons I mentioned, I think I personally don't think it's a week to be waiting. It's a bit of a risk mitigation strategy here as well. You just you don't want to be on the end of everyone gets Pappenhausen, he gets 120, 30 as vice captain, they loop him and you don't have him, especially in a week when the player pool is so limited. So I can kind of see what you're saying, but he's a guy you're going to want eventually. So I think just try to get it done for this week, in my opinion. Madison, Appy for Latrell or Teddy. Mitchell, so I think I do prefer Teddy for the run home. Okay. Alright, we'll probably end the stream there. Guys, I'm thinking about doing a Q&A lockout stream tomorrow as well. So if there's any questions I haven't got to, obviously come back tomorrow and I'll hopefully try to get through as many as I can. But hopefully that was an interesting stream for you guys and you got some value out of that. If you did, do give the stream a like as well. if I've got time, I'll try to rip the audio off this and chuck it onto podcasting platforms. So if anyone wants to kind of listen to it, say tomorrow morning on the way to work or just while they're at home, whatever, I'll try to get that done as well tonight if I can. But appreciate everyone for joining me as well. We had up to like 140 people watching, which is I think one of the highest we've actually had. So yeah, really appreciate everyone for coming out and spending your Wednesday evening with me. Hopefully you guys all have a very good round 17, but yeah, might catch you tomorrow evening before lockout. So give the stream a like on the way out if you did enjoy it, and we'll see you all in the next one.